Hi, my name's Eddie and I'm really passionate about getting everyone into open source. This series is titled Developer Stories. There are so many paths into tech and I'm always interested in everyone's journey and how they got into tech. Our conversation today is going to focus on how to get hired from open source and how people got hired from the Eddie Hub community. My guests today are Naomi, Lucy and Matt. Naomi was one of the original members in Eddie Hub and is also a mod, maintainer and ambassador for Eddie Hub. Lucy, I think we met via open source and tech Twitter and is also an Eddie Hub ambassador. Matt is the founder of Sema Solutions that is a tool to help open source maintainers as well as contributors. Matt hired multiple people from the Eddie Hub community. Thank you all for being here. Please give yourself an introduction, who you are and where you're calling in from. Naomi, would you like to go first?
Hey everyone, I'm Naomi. I am joining from Vancouver, Washington. I am a developer for FreeCodeCamp and a developer for the Rhythm community and community manager for Sema, for TweetShift, and for the 4C community.
That's awesome. You do so much. And I know a lot of these communities, if not all of them and many more, use your awesome open source project, BeccaBot. I think it's in over 100 servers now. Is that correct?
I think over 150 now.
Wow, that's amazing. I can't wait to hear a bit more about that. Okay, over to Lucy. So this is the second time I've interviewed Lucy for Developer Stories. We spoke a few months ago about Lucy's journey into tech. I'm looking forward to finding out more about where you are now and all the exciting things that have happened. If anyone wants to catch up on Lucy's story as well, there's a link in the description below. So over to you, Lucy.
So my name is Lucy. I'm calling in today from Cali, Colombia. But I'm not Colombian, I am from the UK. And at the moment, I am working as a software developer on a freelance project with a company in Greece. And also I'm a technical writer at Sema.
Awesome, I can't wait to dig into that as well too. And Matt, over to you.
Yes, I'm Matt. I'm calling in from Baltimore, Maryland in the Eastern United States. And I'm the founder and CEO of Sema.
Awesome, so what are you all working on at the moment? I know we've touched on briefly about the projects you're working on, the clients you've got and so forth. So what are you working on at the moment? What sort of projects, what sort of features?
So I and the team are working on two things right now that I'm super excited about. One is our core product to help with code reviews and developer portfolios. An amazing team of engineers, designers, and writers working on that. And also I'm a volunteer with an open source community, the Open Source Welcome Committee, bringing in newcomers to open source projects.
Again, that sounds super exciting. I can't wait to dig more into that. So yes, that sounds great. Open source, perfect.
Exactly.
Say it a few times, Eddie's gonna be here. Over to you, Naomi.
So I'm working on I'm working with the team on the new JavaScript curriculum for FreeCodeCamp, taking the same project-based approach that we used with the new responsive web design curriculum. I'm working with Matt over at Sema to plan out a couple of new projects. We're going to take our community leads, Viam and Krish, who are very fantastic people, and get them set up on a project that takes our developer rubric and integrates it with a Discord bot. I'm working on some stuff that I can't quite talk about yet over at the Rhythm community. And then, of course, I am also working on my own Discord bot, Becca Lyria, which is built for community management and moderation, as well as my own game development.
And you're also helping out in the Eddie Hub community as well. We were working today on some GitHub actions for community stats and all those exciting things. I don't know how you find time to do everything. That's really awesome.
The trick is to not have free time and not sleep.
That's not a good trick. We want to promote healthy work-life balance, but that's maybe a conversation for another time. And Lucy.
So when I first spoke with Eddie a few months ago, I was talking about working on a freelance coding project. I'm still working on that now. We've made loads of progress. It's been really interesting to see the progress of my code. I was looking at some code recently I wrote at the beginning and was cringing a lot, which is a good sign. It shows that I've been improving a lot and I've been getting some really great feedback, which I feel like really happy about. And last but not least, I've also been working for just over a month now at Sema as a technical writer. We'll talk a bit more, I think, about how that opportunity came about of Eddie Hub, but I'm basically writing up the documentation using Intercom, like kind of building up their knowledge base to explain how to use the product that Matt was talking about to kind of enhance the code review process for people and be able to create developer portfolios. So it's been a busy few months recently.
That sounds good. Busy is always good. Not too busy, hopefully. And hopefully after June, you get a bit of a break. And we're definitely going to dig deeper into that. So this is a question for all of you again. And I have got some specific to each of you coming up shortly. But what did you do before getting into tech?
I had done grocery retail work for 11 years. I had started, my story is a bit of a mess. So I had started working at my local grocer as a job to get some pocket money while I was going through college. And I did 6 years of university, ended up with no degree. Life took me in a different direction. But I ended up pivoting into management at that grocer job. And I had done that for quite a few years, a total of 11 years, before I had lost my job due to the pandemic. And then I told myself, well, I'm in an okay spot financially, and I'll take a few months off and, just enjoy life. And I lasted 2 weeks before I was bored out of my mind. And I said, okay, well, I need something to do. And I've always liked computers, so I'm going to teach myself how to code. And I Googled up, learn to code for free, and found Free Code Camp. And that's where my whole journey started.
I love your story. It's so great. I mean, everyone's stories is great, but this one, because it's Free Code Camp, open source, it just, really resonates with me. I think it's brilliant.
So I studied maths at university, and straight after university, I ended up working in a software company as a technical business analyst. Since then, after working there for 3 years, I quit my job, had to go traveling, and then I ended up moving to Colombia to be with my partner, who's also Colombian, which was a bit of an adventure. And I came with no plan, and I am still here nearly 2.5 years later. And because of the pandemic, similar to Naomi, that I also started learning to code because it had interested me. I was working as an English teacher to support myself for an online Colombian school. And then now I'm working full-time in tech. So I've actually transitioned now to working fully in technical writing and as a software developer. So yay.
That's awesome.
I have to say, for somebody who started with absolutely no plan, you are doing fantastic.
Thank you.
Let's hear from Matt. Matt's story, I really like it. It's really interesting.
So in a sense, I've never not been in tech, in that both of my parents were computer programmers. And I started programming when I was 5 on some very early Turtle basic computers, Commodore 64, very, very long time ago. I was studied as a lawyer, trained as a lawyer, and then spent most of my professional career at the intersection of technology and mission-driven organizations, is probably the simplest way to say it. I worked with school districts on large-scale technology systems, on government agencies and nonprofits, and always trying to think about how can we use technology to make teams better, make communities better, help serve students. And then along the way, I really fell in love with code quality, because if you can make code quality better, all of those goals become better, and also helping engineers improve their skills. And so from tech in general to really focused on code quality and helping coders in particular.
I love that. And your current company is Sema, but it's not your first company. Is that correct?
That's right. I started a startup many years ago about technology transfer, pulling intellectual property that university scholars have developed and helping contribute back to the economic ecosystem. So that was my first startup. And then I also had the privilege to work for several enterprise software companies that work with education and nonprofits.
And so this is your second startup, although you've done lots of things prior to this. And we're definitely going to focus on Sema and how you even also started a community. Is that correct? About encouraging people to get into open source.
A group of us have started it, but yes, I was part of the founding group. That's right.
So we've talked about lots of the positives. So I want to talk a little bit about the negative. So Naomi, what were some of the challenges you faced getting into tech and how did you overcome them?
So I had done the Free Code Camp curriculum, and it took me, I think, 5 months to complete what was at the time the entire curriculum. You know, I had made the mistake that I see so many developers make of shotgunning applications. You know, I'd sit down on a Monday and I'd say, this is my day to apply to jobs. And I'd hammer out 10 to 12 applications and say, okay, cool, maybe I'll get a job. And because I was focused on the quantity, you know, I was missing out on the quality aspect. I had underestimated the value of networking. And, you know, overcoming that really was, you know, I wasn't landing interviews and wasn't landing a job and needed money because I like having money. Ended up, you know, I continued to contribute to open source and contribute to Free Code Camp. And that ended up being my pathway into the industry.
Love that. And we actually talk more about how you all met and how it all worked out and what stood out for all of you and so forth. So in both directions, right? It's a two-way street. So I'm super excited to, look at the more recent stuff as well. So over to Lucy. Have your challenges changed since we last spoke? And can the community help with any of those?
Well, the challenge that I'm facing personally at the moment is that, I recently posted my first blog, which I've been trying to do for goodness knows how long. But my next challenge is that I really want to start creating content in Spanish on YouTube. My challenge is, because I'm doing it from as a complete beginner. Obviously, I'm not going for some amazing production kind of editing. I'm not going to let that get in the way. But still, trying to work out how to organize just a conversational style video. I know it's going to probably be bad to start, and that's okay. But I just think it's that first hurdle. I'm really challenging. It's a big challenge for me to get over right now. So that's something that keeps being on my to-do list, and it needs to just actually happen instead of pretending I'm planning it, which I'm not.
Well, if we can help with that, do let us know. I know it's going to be super awesome. Okay, over to Matt. So Matt, what are your current challenges that maybe the community can help with as well?
Thank you, Eddie. It's such a great question. We are, as the company, as Sema, about to release our first open source projects that we're sponsoring. And I am so excited about it. Maybe not as excited as you, but I am really close. I have been so fortunate to be mentored by you and mentored by Naomi and others on how to set up an inclusive community. And we have really a high bar to get to try to achieve that. But I am so excited about helping, about having this work and trying it out and learning from it, of having engineers contribute to some open source projects we're starting to help engineers manage their careers.
Okay, sounds awesome. And how can the community get involved or help? What anything
sure.
They
So
can
by
do?
the time this podcast is launched, we will have our open source projects listed and announced, and clear guidance for newcomers, for coding and non-coding. So I encourage you to come to. You can just follow the links in this podcast, and we'll send you to our open source projects.
Links are below. A question for all of you. So how did you all connect so you could all work together? And then what were the following steps and what stood out?
Discord. That was how I connected with everybody, is through Discord, and is my main platform for communication. But specifically, the Eddie Hub Discord. And for those of you who are watching, if you haven't joined the Eddie Hub Discord, you 100% should. You get to wear a cool hoodie like Eddie and I are wearing. And it's a great place to meet fellow developers, specifically who are passionate about open source. I had met Lucy through the Eddie Hub Discord.
So I got to know Matt through the Eddie Hub Discord as well. I completely echo all of the advice that Naomi was just saying. It is an amazing place to be, hang out. You can be interested in open source. That is a bonus, but you can also be there if you are not, or if you're looking into getting into open source. And it's not like we're there just talking about open source all the time, sometimes, but there's other channels where you talk about, they have a wellness channel where you talk about kind of how to look after yourself and give tips, or if people are feeling burnt out, they can talk there. There's another one where you share your achievements, which could be as small as saying like, I just merged a pull request to I got a job. So there's different levels and everyone will always cheer you on. So Matt posted a job description, which I read and I thought, I sent them through to Matt and then we connected, we had an interview. And I think also from being so active on the community and being involved there obviously shows that you have good communication skills and collaboration skills. So I think it's really, really, really good to be involved in communities.
I have currently 5 different roles, and not a single one of them has been a role that I submitted a CV for.
I love that. Community, open source, that's all you need to succeed in the world.
Well, you've already heard part of this story. I had the great pleasure to get to know Eddie earlier this year. I think Vito introduced us and have been learning from Eddie and the Eddie Hub community ever since. And Eddie more than demonstrated a level of intentionality and care about his community that when it came time for me as someone looking to hire, we've had an amazing run so far at Sema, and our growth this year has been phenomenal, and we needed to bring on more folks to help with community and help with writing. It was in all of our best interests, certainly from the Sema side, to go talk to someone I trust. And I trust Eddie so much, and so got his suggestions on not only the job description, and you heard the story from my previous world, it is pretty normal to have a CV ready to go. And so Eddie coached on that it really isn't necessary. And I've definitely learned that lesson very much, and really nudged us along based on the trust and the mutual connection that Eddie already had.
Thank you so much for that, Matt. And what was your selection process? I mean, what were you looking for in a candidate? I got some follow-up questions as well, like how did they stand out?
So Sema is very values focused and very communication focused. And when I say values, I mean a set of norms and approaches to how we work with each other, what matters to us, and how we prioritize. It's sort of the DNA of how we work as an organization. And so finding folks who share those values is incredibly important. Lucy can share a story how several weeks in, she has started explaining our values to newcomers. Communication comes second, and it's values and communication, I always say, are more important than the work. Values, of course, you can trust people. Communication, so you can make things work when we're all in 50 different locations. If you're not really good and disciplined about being able to communicate, it just doesn't work in a work from anywhere world. And then after that, I looked for substantive experience in the areas that we were looking for. So community management and open source, Naomi has that in spades. And writing, I knew Lucy had done some writing and I had seen a little bit already. And so that substantive experience was a requirement, but only after the values and communication compatibility were met.
I think it's great that you share what stood out, because then other people can see the value, that they shouldn't put their, I guess, efforts and focus on just their resume or CV. I think people focus too much on that. So Matt, thank you so much for sharing that and being, super honest and transparent in that. So Lucy and Naomi, what were you looking for in a role? And also, what were you looking for in a company?
So for me, I had been wanting to develop my writing skills as an extra sort of source of income, because I'm very interested in coding and I love that. But because I have plans to try and work remotely, so I thought that writing would be an amazing thing to try and develop, because it's an amazing source of extra income. So I already had that in my mind. And when I saw the opportunity come up in Eddie Hub, like for me also seeing it there, it's the same as what Matt was saying. Like, I know that for Matt to be able to share that opportunity in Eddie Hub means that he has to be someone that is like trusted, good to work with, and like has that connection, the same sort of sets of values. And for me, it made it seem like this is going to be a great place to work without even knowing too much about the company at first. And for me with a company, I think at the moment, obviously I'm looking for remote roles, and also a company that really sort of looks out for their employees and kind of there's a level of respect, like from working remotely, how you're able to work flexibly and you're able to kind of set your own hours and also be trusted, because there's a lot of trust in a remote role, that it's not like you're having to like submit all your hours and explain exactly what you were doing down to the minute. And so for me, it's been really lovely to work with Sema and have such a great sense of trust, and also be working with such an amazing group of people. I think everyone there is a really good vibe, and I've just really enjoyed my time there so far, even though it's only been a month. But yeah, it's been amazing.
That's amazing to hear. We do get literally almost every day companies, and so many companies that you'll know, saying, can we advertise this role in your community? And it's literally 99% of the time a no. If it's not someone we've worked with or someone we know really well, it is definitely a no. So we were really excited, having worked with Matt, only for a short period, but still, you can get that vibe. To give an example, on one of my calls with Matt, I think we finished I can't remember how long, 20 minutes early or something. And I said, Matt, you still got 20 minutes left. And Matt was like, no, it's fine. You look tired. I think I was in Bali at the time. He says, we're going to just, don't worry about it. Do it another time. But I think it's a two-way street, because that really kind of, really resonated. I was tired and I was going to, power through, and I really appreciated, Matt saying, we've covered up to this topic. Let's not cover any more. So when I was speaking to, Michael, Matt's colleague, the other day, we hit the hour, and again, Michael, just like the whole situation with Matt on Matt's calls, normally Matt says, okay, time's up, let's call it a day there. Michael said, okay, time's up, let's call it a day. I said, don't worry, Matt's got loads of time in the bag, let's continue. I think we continue for another 20-25 minutes over, and I was happy to do that, because it's a two-way street, give and take. And I think that's really, really, really important. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, and they always try and take that extra 10 minutes on top, or whatever it is. But it happens occasionally, and they might ask politely for it. But how some people kind of always do it. And I think if people are respectful, then other people will go the extra mile for you straight away. So I'm not surprised that you're having an awesome time, Lucy. I know we are as well. And Naomi, over to you.
I go first because Lucy steals all my answers if I don't. When I was first looking for a role way back when, I just wanted money, because it turns out that living is expensive and you need to get paid. All of the work that I do is work that aligns with what I'm passionate about and where my own interests lie. If we take, for example, Sema, that was an opportunity that was presented to me through EddieHub, and it was an opportunity that I jumped on because Sema is very much about facilitating open source, and I am very passionate about open source.
And it's interesting that you say that. I think that's super important, but I do even get messages again from companies that you would have heard of. And they say, Eddie, we're trying to hire for this. You've even offered an extra 30K a year. And it's but look at your, job description. It looks very kind of bro culture like. It might not be like that in the company, but that first impression is most people want a kind of inclusive, safe and welcoming environment. And people go to those companies or that hiring manager, whoever posted the job post, they go to their social accounts and they see how they communicate. And if it is, not in a friendly and inclusive and empathetic way, then that's going to be their impression of the company. So yeah, I think it is really, really important. People are looking for more than just a job and just a salary, especially when we spend so much time with this company, with those companies. Sorry, Matt, another question for Naomi and Lucy. When you started open source and collaborating with the community, did you think it would lead to where you are now?
So when I had first started with open source, when I first started learning to code, I had learned through FreeCodeCamp, which was an open source platform. But then I had pivoted to a friend of mine who was also in the FreeCodeCamp community, was working on an open source Discord bot. And I said, well, hey, I'll make a couple contributions, learn some stuff. And that's what ended up getting me involved with the Discord ecosystem. It was really at that point that I developed my own passion for open source and, had said, I want all of the work that I do to be open source, and everything that I build should be freely available to others. When I pivoted from that and started building my own Discord bot, Beccaleria, I had gotten back into Discord, but I can't say that I got involved in open source with the idea of I'm going to turn this into a job. I got involved in open source with really the idea of I want to build tools that help people and that are available for people to use.
I love it when there are open source alternatives to closed source products. I really, really love that. I think it's just such a cool thing.
For me, it was, I just really remember when I first interacted with Eddie. I think Eddie found one of my final project for CS50 web development course. And Eddie had found it and said, oh, it's really cool. Comment on it saying, is it open source? And I because I never heard of this magical thing, open source. So I was like, it kind of embarrassed to ask the question. I'm not sure if I shared this. I've definitely shared this with Eddie before, but I can't remember if I shared it on the other video. But I remember I was embarrassed to publicly ask, like, what does that mean? So I sent a message to Eddie on Twitter, and he responded so quickly and gave me like the fullest answer ever. And I was just like, who is this guy with all these followers and so keen to help? I know now that you've probably got too many messages. I know you obviously want to encourage people to ask questions in public, and I know you're still trying to answer, but not saying don't go direct message Eddie with all your questions, but it just gave me like this impression of like, okay, that you really are that kind of person that wants to help people. So for me, straight away, I felt like connected with that and kind of thinking whatever kind of Eddie's involved with or whatever his community is, I want to be involved because it suits I also love to help people and that kind of quality. So that's why I just went wherever Eddie was, basically. So, and not that I was like following him or anything, but basically my advice is like, if you connect with someone on tech Twitter in terms of like, if you align with their values, if you align with their interests, if you are similar, if you have you're interested in the same things, then stick with what they're doing. So many people now have their own communities and you really can join, if you wanted to, like 100 communities. I wouldn't recommend that. But I really do think is look for people that are doing things that you're already kind of, that you find inspirational or that you're connected with. Get involved in their communities. And I think that's more valuable than just getting involved with lots of communities that you don't align with. So that would be I didn't necessarily go into the community thinking I'd come out with a job or coming out with a role. But I do think putting your energy into places where you're aligned with that person really can create opportunities. So go join your communities. It doesn't have to be Eddie Hub. If that's not your alignment, you could go somewhere else.
I was just going to say, if you're watching Eddie's podcast here and Eddie Hub isn't your vibe, I wonder how you got to the podcast. You should totally join Eddie Hub.
Yeah, I wonder why you're still here.
I was going to add that you can always change communities in the future. So join one, and if you're engaging with it, getting benefits from it, but you outgrow it, or it goes in the direction you don't want to go with, you can always change. You're not stuck to a community. So try some out and see what works for you now, and your requirements in the future might be different. So I have a question for Matt. So Matt, what advice would you give to people who are getting involved in open source or thinking about it, and they want to, work in open source and get paid to do it? What stands out for you, and what tips would you give?
Build on something that Lucy said about communities. I also think it's true for open source projects, which is it's super appropriate to explore and to explore many, but then you really want to focus. It's really about building relationships and building deep experiences. And that always comes from doing a very small number of things really well, rather than a large number of things lightly. If you're a newcomer both to open source and to coding, my first recommendation is get yourself from a beginner level of coding to advanced beginner. You may ask, how do we measure this? It's subjective, but I'm very excited to say that we're releasing some open source standards as a self-assessment, so you can decide if you meet the advanced beginner standard. I highly recommend free Code Camp as obviously the amazing set of tutorials, along with some others, shout out to Kunal, that if just by following tutorials and doing them really well, you can get yourself from beginner to advanced beginner. When you're joining an open source community and you're there to be helpful, and you're there to be helpful before you're going to get help, that's always how it works, you want to be more helpful than you require. You want to give more than you can take. And so get yourself to the basic level of advanced beginner before trying to contribute on the code side. And then probably the last thing I'd say, especially if you're starting out in open source, is have a lot of empathy for the maintainers. They have an incredibly hard job. Lots of people asking questions, so many notifications. It's a super, super hard job, which, by the way, they may be not even be paid for. And so think, if before you send that message, if I were on the other side, would I want this message? Would I want to receive this message? And use that as your guide. It includes almost certainly you shouldn't be writing them individually. You should put it in public because someone else can reply. It involves a great deal of respect and appreciation, and just generally being a good human as if they're in the same room with you. Sometimes we forget, it's easy to forget if we're working from anywhere, that there really is a human on the other side, and moderators just have such a hard job. You really have to be just particularly empathetic to them.
It's true. I think there's like so many great tips in there. I'm just trying to digest them all. Like so many good tips. You're right. Having a maintainer or a mod or just someone helping you on the other side, they're another person, right? They have responsibilities, be it family, children, parents, work. They might be paid, they might be not. But yeah, I think it's really important to realize that, and hopefully people will then ask the question slightly differently or give their feedback very, very differently. I think that's, really, really important. So super well put.
So Naomi, as someone very involved in communities, I'd like to ask you, where do you find support in tech? And when I say support, it might be about a technical problem, or maybe where do you find encouragement and motivation from others? Because I feel like you're the one giving all the motivation, encouragement. Where do you find it?
Honestly, I find it in the communities that I've joined. It's all about finding those communities, whether it's on Discord, on GitHub, on Slack, whichever platform you prefer, but finding those communities that are passionate about helping people grow and learn. Then, things like Twitter and GitHub, Eddie is a huge proponent of open source, and I am too. I say open source your very first line of code, because learning in public is such a huge platform and huge avenue for, getting that support.
That is so true and great advice. And I want to try and spin the question around a bit towards Matt, because Naomi, being a coder, and you're talking to other coders, I think, coders are great, I think, but sometimes they only want to chat to other people who code. So Matt, you're involved in so many of the communities. You've got your own community as well. How did you find the support for you, and how did you find the coding community supported you, or are there improvements that could be done?
Incredibly grateful for the level of support, for the types of support that I've received, far more than I deserve. I just feel incredibly grateful for it. First and foremost, the tech community includes my amazing colleagues at Sema, who are coders and non-coders, and just how much they've meant to me and how much they've supported me and given as colleagues. But also writers on tech Twitter and members of communities and leaders of communities like Eddie Hub. I remember being taught learning in public, and just how weird, just not obvious the first time you hear it, that, what you mean you're supposed to ask your questions in public instead of asking someone privately? And actually, yes, that really is so. I've just been so honored by the level of openness and support, technically and non-technically.
And another question for you, Matt. Sorry to throw another one at you, but how do you find time for everything? Because being, a CEO of a startup is really, really time consuming. You've got people from all around the world, and you're, involved in our community. You're really active on Twitter, supporting people, resharing the content, and then you've also got family. And I'm sure you've got hobbies and time outside work. How do you find time for everything?
I have a lot of support and a lot of understanding and patience from my family. And I love them very much. And I'm very grateful to them for understanding that some things are worth investing a lot of time in. Some things really matter. And I'm beyond grateful to my family for understanding that, because it wouldn't work otherwise. Second, I try really hard to do only the things that either I do really well or it brings me a lot of energy. And everything else to give those tasks and responsibilities away to someone else who likes doing them more, or does them better than I? And so there's a very short list of things left for me to do with that. I really like writing on Twitter, so I get to keep doing that myself. But it really delegating and supporting, which requires, as Lucy said earlier, a great deal of trust in the people we hire to carry out their work. Third is I'm really anal about managing my calendar. And I think that's been even more important with, as you said, a global team. I do what my calendar says. Huge shout out to my amazing assistant, Jamie. And she puts things on my calendar and I do them, no questions asked. And it just makes sure that I'm spending the time doing the things that matter the most.
Okay, I want to ask all of you for closing notes, I think.
Eddie and Lucy and Naomi, I'll share some of my closing thoughts. And first and foremost, I literally have goosebumps just thinking about we didn't know each other 6 months ago, some of us 2 months ago, and the level of trust and generosity of spirit that each of you exhibit and the community exhibits is just so special, and just so honored to have met you and to be a part of this. What I'd say, I imagine there's some listeners here who are earlier in their careers and may not be as, quote, far along as some other people. I'm such an advocate for tech, and I'm such an advocate for open source and tech in particular. But what you've heard from Eddie and Lucy and Naomi is they've all had the ability through their very hard work and their commitment to make values-based choices, to work with people and communities and teams based on their own preferences. You've heard Naomi talk about not submitting resumes and just opportunities coming to her as a reflection of her work and her reputation. I just feel so passionate of tech as an enabler for people to, honestly, to live their best lives, which includes a big part at work and being part of communities, whether work communities or social or volunteer communities. Tech is an enabler of that. And so I really encourage you on your journey. It will be hard, but it unlocks doors for tens of millions of people around the earth. And I really encourage you to keep it up.
Such great advice. Absolutely.
I really don't think that Matt's closing notes can be topped. That was fantastic. I think what I would say is tech itself is so much more than just writing code. There are so many different aspects to being in the tech industry, and I would encourage everybody who's listening or watching to not undervalue the potential that comes from joining a community and from connecting with other people and from getting involved in open source. My entire career is because of open source. So, there's a lot more potential there than I think people initially realize.
So yeah, Matt's ending note was just beautiful. I just think I'm not going to repeat everything that Matt was saying. Yeah, I just want to end with just to say that I am a big advocate for these kind of unconventional ways into tech. I think I was really overwhelmed by the whole application process for like a real, I say real, I mean, I am working as a software developer, but for these typical kind of software developer roles where you've got to go through this really intense process. I personally didn't feel ready for that. Like I suffer, like everyone, sometimes with a bit of imposter syndrome. You've really got to go there and sell yourself. And I didn't feel ready to do that. So I think there are other ways into tech. And another slightly kind of more directed note, if anyone is here listening that speaks Spanish or they're in Latin America and you're a developer and you're trying to like get into tech or you're having challenges, I really want to hear your problems, because I am not Colombian. I am not from Latin America. But I would like to try and understand a bit more, like, what are your problems maybe with getting into open source? I don't know if open source is such a big thing in Latin America. That's something I would like to try and find out, or connect with people that are involved with open source within the Latin American community. I've seen firsthand how difficult it's been for my partner to find a role, his first role here in Latin America. So I know there's lots of struggles. So if you are a Latin American developer, please contact me and tell me your problems. I would love to speak with you. And obviously I'm here to support as many people as I can. And I will also be in the Eddie Hub Discord to support people. But yeah, if you're a Latin American developer, come.
That sounds great. And it's great to see what other challenges, people have and how we can help. So I think that's really, really important. Thank you all so much. You all have been absolutely wonderful. Everyone listening or watching, don't forget to follow these amazing people, my amazing guests, Naomi, Lucy, and Matt. Their links are in the description below. Go follow them on Twitter and all the rest. Any questions you have for them, we all love questions. Please ask in public, drop them a tag, because then other people can also give their opinion, and you can also grow your network and all the great stuff from that as well. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already.